You're the son, I think, of parents who attended residential schools.
Certainly my father did.
Tell me about that, and how did it factor into what you came into the job knowing and how you experienced it?
Well, when I first started this, I didn't know my father had gone to residential school. It was only after I had started speaking to survivors, and I was visiting with my uncle, who was a residential school survivor, and I knew that he had gone to residential school. And I had been to visit him many times, and he wanted to talk to me about the independent assessment process that he went through to get his compensation claim. And then he revealed in the course of our conversation that my father had been abused in residential schools, and I had no idea until he told me. And then, of course, like many intergenerational survivors, then everything clicked into place for me to explain why my father was the way he was. Now, you know, he had experienced a lot of difficulties in the course of his lifetime. He was a veteran of the Second World War. He'd been severely injured in the course of the war. He'd been in the hospital for a year. He almost died because of his war injuries. He had been a victim of a cave-in during the mines when he worked in the mines, and he had been severely assaulted when he was living on the streets of Winnipeg, and spent a lot of time in the hospitals. He was an alcoholic, and had a lot of personal mental health issues that he had to struggle with during the course of his lifetime, including the fact that he lost his wife, my mother, when I was an infant. And so all of that was going on in his life, but I wasn't aware of the residential school part until afterwards. And he would have been in residential school when he was a young boy. So he went to war when he was 14 in the 1940s. Everybody lied about their age at that time. And so he would have joined the war in the early 40s, and that means that he probably experienced abuse in residential school when he was around 9 or 10. That's my uncle's clearest estimate.
Why do you think your dad never told you?
Well, he didn't talk about a lot of things. He never talked about his war experience. He didn't talk about the cave-in experience. I learned that all through my uncles. So I think trauma is a difficult thing for people to talk about. I think it's just to start talking about trauma just triggers the trauma and the experience of the trauma in you. So I think of necessity, people protect themselves by not going into the trauma. But on top of that, when he was alive, and he died in 1994, when he was alive, nobody was talking about residential schools. None of the survivors were publicly discoursing about it. And it was, I think, because there was a certain element of shame about things that happened in the schools, and there was also undoubtedly a sense that nobody was listening anyway. And perhaps to a certain extent it was almost like there was an element of normalcy about it. So it was happening to everybody, and therefore my story is not special. And we've heard that from survivors too, that, they say on the one hand, I didn't think it happened to anybody else, but on the other hand, they say it's like everybody just accepted that this was the kind of thing that was going on.